e credo che dobbiamo riprendere. Abbiate pazienza, io vi faccio lavorare.
Allora, good afternoon, buon pomeriggio, buenas tardes et bonjour. Soir, sì, guten Tag o guten Morgen. La signora e no suor Margarita Bofarull et myself, joyeux Noël del Canada et d'Espagne. We are very grateful and we thank Monsieur Padia and all, the organizing committee to have invited us to be moderator for this second session. And I thank you for being here. At the end of the afternoon, we are a little bit tired. E la capacità di ascoltare diminuisce. The capacity of listening, diminish. So I invite you to be more attentive, like, in a Ukrainian liturgy, when the deacons, before proclaiming a reading, ask the people to be attentive. So be attentive for the rest of this afternoon. I think we had a very interesting first session, and now we will reflect upon the anthropological implication of the converging technologies. But before speaking about this, I remind you that you have to prepare your questions, and we will try to, at the end of the 3 presentations, we'll answer. And if not, we will have time tomorrow, during the time of discussion. And so prepare your questions. And now we are reflecting on the anthropological implication of the new and converging technologies. So we would have someone to speak on the philosophical challenges and issues raised by this converging technology. And after, we would have, a presenter on the theological dimension and aspect of these technologies. And the third one will be on the legal dimension. So now I ask Suor Margarita to introduce our first speaker.
Muchas gracias, Monseñor Simard. Buenas tardes. Tengo el gusto de presentarles al profesor Mauro CERUTI, que es profesor ordinario de Lógica y Filosofía de la Ciencia en la Universidad de la Lengua y de la Comunicación de Milano. Es miembro también del Comité Científico de la Asociación Européenne Modélisation de la Complexité y miembro también del Consejo Científico Internacional de la Cátedra Itinerante UNESCO Edgar Morin. El profesor CERUTI es uno de los pioneros y desarrolladores de las teorías, métodos y epistemologías de sistemas complejos y de la línea de investigación transdisciplinar habitualmente denominada pensamiento complejo, que tiene como objetivo, si no me equivoco, la innovación de los paradigmas de la racionalidad. Profesor CERUTI tiene la palabra.
Grazie. Parlerò in italiano perché i pensieri che vi trasmetterò sono più familiari alla lingua italiana che non alla lingua inglese. E poi non per mancanza di rispetto, ma preferirei, se non vi dispiace, parlare da seduto, perché a proposito dell'unità della mente e del corpo, e qui gli illustri neuroscienziati potranno dirmi qualcosa a questo proposito, riesco ad avere una postura più riflessiva se parlo da seduto invece che se parlo in piedi. Nella lettera Humana Communitas, citata anche questa mattina in apertura del nostro bellissimo congresso, e ringrazio il Presidente Monsignor Paglia di avermi coinvolto, è veramente un onore e un piacere partecipare a questo bellissimo convegno dialogico fra tante discipline e soprattutto fra tante persone da tutto il mondo. Nella lettera Humana Communitas il Santo Padre denunciava la presenza nel nostro tempo di un paradosso che definiva e che definisce il paradosso del progresso e scriveva: come è potuto accadere che proprio nel momento della storia del mondo in cui le risorse economiche e tecnologiche disponibili consentirebbero di prenderci sufficientemente cura della casa comune e della famiglia umana, proprio da esse, dalle risorse economiche e tecnologiche, vengano, domanda, le nostre divisioni più aggressive e i nostri incubi peggiori? Ecco, questo paradosso del progresso, denunciato dal Santo Padre, contiene, in certo senso riassume, altri paradossi di cui nel nostro tempo facciamo esperienza. Provo a enuclearne qui rapidissimamente solo 3, per cercarne alla fine un punto non di soluzione, ma almeno di lettura, di prospettiva. Il primo paradosso: il potenziamento parossistico della nostra capacità tecnologica coincide oggi con una inedita esperienza di abitare un mondo indisponibile. Viviamo in un tempo in cui l'apice del nostro potere cognitivo e tecnologico si accompagna all'irrompere della incontrollabilità del nostro mondo. Questa incontrollabilità e questo paradosso si esprimono innanzitutto nelle crisi globali in cui siamo immersi: crisi ecologica, climatica, economica, sanitaria, migratoria, crisi della pace, crisi che si articolano, si intrecciano in modo complesso. Complesso non è complicato, complectere, intrecciare insieme, da questo verbo latino, rivelandoci la nostra incapacità di affrontarle. Secondo paradosso: la scienza, quale progetto, la scienza moderna, quale progetto volta a conoscere per il conoscere, si era sviluppata in Europa nel 600 e nel 700, liberandosi da ogni controllo. Ma proprio attraverso i suoi straordinari sviluppi in questi secoli, in questi pochi secoli, la scienza si è planetarizzata ed è diventata sempre più strutturalmente controllata dagli interessi e dalle forze degli apparati economici e statali. E gli scienziati, spesso, di fatto, sono privi dei poteri che tuttavia emergono dai loro laboratori. Terzo paradosso: la global polity è ancora orientata da una concezione della politica internazionale come un gioco a somma nulla. Vinco io, perdi tu, vinci tu, perdo io. La politica ha il più grande e urgente bisogno di complessità, di concepire la complessità. Ne abbiamo sentito parole molto interessanti nella prolusione di questa mattina da parte del professor Strand. E tuttavia la politica produce idee sempre più semplificanti per società sempre più complesse, prende decisioni sempre più unilaterali per un mondo che non è mai stato così interconnesso. Ecco, tutti questi paradossi, ricompresi nel paradosso denunciato dal Santo Padre nella lettera Humana Communitas che vi ho letto in esordio alla mia comunicazione, tutti questi paradossi ci obbligano a prendere consapevolezza di una profonda crisi cognitiva, alla quale faceva riferimento il Presidente della Pontificia Accademia, Monsignor Paglia, questa mattina. Questa crisi cognitiva concerne la difficoltà di pensare la complessità del nostro mondo e del nostro tempo, in cui tutto è connesso, tutto è in relazione. Più aumenta la complessità del nostro mondo, cioè l'intreccio irriducibile di molteplici dimensioni, più aumenta la tentazione della semplificazione. L'ostacolo alla formulazione stessa dei problemi complessi del nostro tempo si annida proprio, mi verrebbe da dire, non nell'ignoranza di fronte ai problemi, ma nella nostra conoscenza, nel modo in cui la nostra conoscenza è prodotta ed è organizzata, cioè continuano a essere separate, e lo sono sempre di più, conoscenze che dovrebbero essere interconnesse, perché interconnessi e non separabili sono i molteplici aspetti dei problemi che dobbiamo formulare ed affrontare. Così le soluzioni cercate e proposte il più delle volte sono esse stesse causa dei problemi, parte dei problemi. I modi di pensare che utilizziamo per trovare soluzioni alle crisi, soluzioni ai problemi più gravi della nostra età globale, costituiscono essi stessi uno dei problemi più gravi che dobbiamo affrontare. E allora il modo in cui evolvono e sono gestite le tecnologie emergenti è un'espressione paradigmatica di questa crisi cognitiva. Molta parte della odierna tecnologia vive e si sviluppa separatamente dalla scienza. È quasi difficile da dirsi questa considerazione. In un certo senso la tecnologia, soprattutto le tecnologie emergenti, si sviluppa quasi in piena autonomia, si autogenera. Materia intelligente, biotecnologie, simulazioni, mondi immaginari prodotti dall'evoluzione del software, dalle capacità di calcolo del computer, avatar, robot, agenti artificiali, stanno entrando nei paesaggi della nostra vita quotidiana senza che siano disponibili teorie e approcci in grado di prefigurare e orientare le possibilità, i limiti, le conseguenze della loro diffusione. E nel contempo le dimensioni di questi impatti si estendono, si allargano. L'evoluzione della tecnologia ha prodotto quella che è stata definita una estensione della responsabilità umana verso nuovi ambiti. La nostra responsabilità si è estesa verso ambiti verso i quali non avevamo responsabilità, verso le specie viventi, verso la biodiversità, verso gli ecosistemi naturali, verso il pianeta Terra nella sua interezza, verso la possibilità stessa della sopravvivenza della nostra specie. E con le tecnologie emergenti la responsabilità si estende, ne abbiamo sentito parlare molto bene anche nelle relazioni di questo pomeriggio, verso i costituenti genetici, verso l'identità biologica della natura umana, che in qualche modo perde quella stabilità che era considerato un presupposto nella filosofia, nell'etica, nella scienza moderna. E il modo in cui il sapere è organizzato, proprio questo modo in cui il sapere è organizzato, ostacola l'assunzione della responsabilità, frammenta e separa le scienze fra di loro, rendendo difficile, talvolta impossibile, un loro dialogo con i saperi umanistici, che semmai è posticcio. Questa frammentazione impedisce di riconoscere la non neutralità della tecnologia e in particolare la non neutralità delle tecnologie emergenti. E badate, non mi riferisco in questa sede tanto alla non neutralità politica, sociale, economica, di cui nelle relazioni proprio di questo pomeriggio abbiamo sentito parlare. Mi riferisco qui in particolare, da filosofo, che arriva un po' alla sera, mi scuso se siamo tutti affaticati, ma Hegel diceva che la filosofia arriva alla sera come l'uccello di Minerva, la civetta, e quindi sono qua a tormentarvi. Mi riferisco qui in particolare alla non neutralità epistemologica, cioè le tecnologie vengono prodotte e gestite comunque all'interno di una prospettiva epistemologica, all'interno di un paradigma di conoscenza, di una visione dell'uomo, di una visione del rapporto degli esseri umani con il mondo. E l'epistemologia che è alla base del paradigma tecnocratico, oggi prevalente, su cui il Santo Padre nelle sue ultime 2 encicliche si è molto soffermato, ecco, alla base dell'epistemologia, del paradigma tecnocratico, c'è un metodo di conoscenza che piace definire disgiuntivo, semplificante. L'epistemologia del paradigma tecnocratico è basata sull'immagine della mente umana come separata dal mondo naturale. Per i filosofi possiamo dire sull'immagine delineata così bene da René Descartes, da Renato Cartesio a suo tempo. Una mente umana separata dal mondo naturale, ivi compreso il proprio corpo, il corpo in cui la mente si realizza. Ecco, questo dualismo isola un soggetto attivo da un mondo concepito come inerme, disponibile. In questa prospettiva si delinea la concezione di una mente computante, in qualche modo quasi naturalmente ridotta o elevata alla funzione di mente computante, alla virtù del calcolo, capace di conoscere e manipolare la materia da cui è separata. E gli artefatti tecnologici sono definiti come suoi strumenti di dominio, prolungamenti della mente, capaci in linea di principio di sostituirsi alla mente nelle operazioni di trattamento e di consumo di quel serbatoio di risorse in cui consisterebbe il mondo naturale, corpo umano incluso. La maggior parte della tecnologia oggi esprime questa epistemologia, si sviluppa all'interno inconsapevolmente di questa epistemologia, come se fosse l'unica epistemologia possibile, neutra. Rimane la tecnologia oggi legata a un paradigma di pensiero che produce progetti tecnologici imperniati sull'identificazione uomo-macchina e sull'ideale del controllo della natura e, ripeto, ivi compreso la natura del corpo umano, una prospettiva che non solo limita drasticamente le possibilità di creare nuovi tipi di tecnologia, ma una prospettiva che limita anche i modi di utilizzo degli artefatti tecnologici. Ecco, possiamo comprendere questo considerando rapidissimamente, da parte mia, un esempio, e come caso paradigmatico l'intelligenza artificiale, e in ciò sono facilitato dalle brillanti, chiarissime comunicazioni dei colleghi che mi hanno preceduto. L'intelligenza artificiale, definita come computazionalista, è nata dall'idea di una equivalenza funzionale fra la nostra mente e il software che produciamo. Qual è l'ipotesi? L'ipotesi propone una identificazione mente-macchina che definisce sia la mente che la macchina come espressioni del pensiero razionale, qui ridotto a calcolo, indipendenti dalla loro realizzazione materiale, cioè il nostro corpo in un caso e l'hardware nel caso dei calcolatori. E questa è un'idea di origine cibernetica che almeno dagli anni 50 del Novecento permea sia la descrizione scientifica dominante del nostro funzionamento cognitivo, sia le tecnologie della cognizione. Attraverso la diffusione di computer e applicazioni software, questa idea si propaga nei contesti in cui si svolge la nostra vita quotidiana da non esperti e oggi influenza la nostra autopercezione, cioè il modo in cui ci definiamo, la nostra cultura, al punto che è diventato pressoché normale descrivere noi stessi come elaboratori di informazione e considerare i calcolatori digitali come estensioni della nostra mente. C'è una variante molto interessante a cui faceva riferimento in particolare il professor Siciliano in modo molto profondo prima, una variante dell'equazione uomo-macchina che oggi si ripropone nell'intelligenza artificiale cosiddetta embodied, incorporata. È un'alternativa emergente al computazionalismo che riconosce l'unità di mente e corpo, cerca di superare questo dualismo. E in questa prospettiva in effetti vengono costruiti quelli che sono definiti agenti artificiali completi, cioè robot in grado di conoscere l'ambiente circostante mediante il corpo. Qual è la novità teorica? È data dal ruolo nuovo cognitivo che qui viene assunto dalla corporeità e si traduce in innovazioni tecnologiche straordinarie che vanno dai robot biomimetici ai cosiddetti robot sociali. Eppure anche in questi sviluppi restiamo legati all'epistemologia che supporta l'equazione uomo-macchina. Da un lato questi robot sono concepiti come modelli scientifici del nostro funzionamento cognitivo e così implicitamente diventano nuovi veicoli del dualismo epistemologico, in questo caso un uomo composto da un corpo elettromeccanico e una mente computazionale. Inoltre, in molti contesti applicativi, queste nuove macchine sono progettate come agenti artificiali capaci di riprodurre le nostre modalità di interazione con l'ambiente e con gli altri, esseri umani, e così in grado, in linea di principio, di sostituirci in queste interazioni. Non di aiutarci, di supportarci, di facilitarci attraverso le loro specificità, ma di prendere il nostro posto, di svolgere le nostre funzioni, interpretare i nostri ruoli intesi come semplificati sul modello della macchina, in un rapporto di semplificazione ricorsiva. Ecco, il principio della sostituibilità uomo-macchina inizia a incrinarsi nelle direzioni human-centric, person-centric, però vedete, anche gli approcci che oggi sono definiti così, human-centric, person-centric, artificial intelligence, trovano le proprie espressioni prevalenti in progetti classici di manipolazione dell'ambiente, solo mitigati dall'attenzione per la sostenibilità e associati di fatto a programmi di ottimizzazione della produttività della manodopera. E lo spazio epistemologico preeminente rimane quello dell'uomo, maître possesseur, dominatore e possessore di uno sfondo naturale, uno sfondo che include non solo l'ambiente, ma anche gli aspetti dell'umano riconosciuti come manipolabili. Qual è allora la sfida oggi? La sfida oggi è quella di un consapevole cambiamento dell'epistemologia da porre alla base delle tecnologie emergenti. La via, oggi peraltro praticabile, ne abbiamo sentito parlare, è quella di progettare e utilizzare le tecnologie emergenti in una prospettiva epistemologica che riconosca la complessità dell'umano, cioè la sua molteplicità di dimensioni intrecciate, la complessità del rapporto uomo-natura, la complessità dei circuiti di codeterminazione uomo-macchina, mente-corpo-tecnologia, naturale e artificiale. Nella prospettiva di un'epistemologia complessa, l'umano è inteso come parte integrante del mondo naturale. Ciò conduce alla costruzione del concetto dell'umano come vita che produce le condizioni della vita. In questa prospettiva si esprime l'idea di un'umanità con le sue tecnologie, le sue culture, iscritta in una relazione circolare di codefinizione, di cotrasformazione con la natura, ivi compresa la nostra, la propria. È un essere umano che non può disporre di una conoscenza e di un potere di sorvolo esterna del mondo naturale. Le strutture naturali che costituiscono l'umano, mentre gli permettono di conoscere, vincolano le sue possibilità di conoscenza. In questa prospettiva si esprime la consapevolezza dell'anello di codeterminazione tra limiti e possibilità e dell'anello di codipendenza tra azione dell'uomo sulla natura e azione della natura sull'uomo, in cui la trasformazione dell'ambiente è l'avvio di un processo di autotrasformazione i cui effetti non sono completamente controllabili. In altri termini, è la consapevolezza di appartenere a un processo di autoregolazione di un sistema di cui l'uomo non è controllore, ma uno dei fattori codeterminanti e in cotrasformazione. Questa visione, che potremmo definire deantropocentrizzata, ma nel senso di non antropocentrica, di un uomo concepito come separato dalla natura e dominatore dalla natura, questa visione è decisiva proprio per creare tecnologie veramente human-centric, person-centric, capace di mettere l'uomo, la persona, al centro attraverso la cogenerazione di un bene comune. Questa epistemologia complessa orienta a progettare tecnologie coerenti con la visione sistemica della relazione cosmoantropologica, in cui l'uomo non è più considerato separabile dalla natura, ma riconosciuto come parte integrante di un processo complesso di coevoluzione. Orienta questa visione a pensare e a costruire macchine che siano non strumenti di dissezione, di isolamento, di manipolazione, di controllo, ma elementi coadiuvanti di processi di autoregolazione del tessuto dinamico delle nostre ecologie, cioè orienta a creare artefatti concepiti come irriducibilmente diversi da noi, progettualmente iscritti in una relazione sinergica con noi, non sostituibili a noi, come spiegavano bene il professor CHNEIWEISS e il professor Siciliano. Ecco, allora, per concludere, è questa la prospettiva di un'alleanza tra uomo e tecnologia a supporto di una nuova alleanza tra uomo e natura, una prospettiva che non può trovare il proprio perno nel modo in cui, bisogna riconoscerlo, di fatto oggi sono concepiti i processi di ricerca e innovazione nei settori delle tecnologie emergenti. Questo approccio filosofico, promotore di un dialogo transdisciplinare, può dare oggi un contributo decisivo per mettere in discussione la visione semplificatrice dell'umano che oggi ispira prevalentemente l'ideazione e l'utilizzo delle tecnologie emergenti all'interno di un paradigma tecnocratico. E nel contempo può contribuire a delineare una visione che riconosca la complessità dell'intreccio uomo-natura-tecnologia e crei le condizioni culturali per affrontare la sfida della dilatazione della nostra responsabilità, orientandola al bene comune. Questa visione oggi è resa quanto mai necessaria e vitale dalla inedita possibilità tecnologica di autosoppressione dell'umanità, a cui faceva riferimento Monsignor Paglia questa mattina. E questa possibilità rende l'umanità una comunità di destino, legata dagli stessi pericoli, dalla necessità di una cultura non più basata sulla logica appunto dei giochi a somma nulla, vinco io, perdi tu, sia nei rapporti fra gli umani, sia nel rapporto uomo-natura, ma basata sulla logica dei giochi a somma positiva, vinco io, vinci tu, una logica della solidarietà fra gli umani e anche fra gli umani e la natura. Ecco, concludo così, in questa nuova condizione e autocomprensione antropologica si delinea la necessità di comprendere che siamo parti della rete della vita, che tutto è in relazione, tutto è connesso. Questa è la logica del vivente e solo in conformità ad essa le tecnologie emergenti potranno essere mediatrici di coevoluzioni finalizzate alla tutela e alla produzione di beni comuni planetari. Solo in questo orizzonte, per riprendere le parole del Santo Padre da cui sono partito, potremo sciogliere il paradosso del progresso che lega i più straordinari successi nella conoscenza alla più terribile cecità e alle più pericolose illusioni, i più strepitosi avanzamenti materiali e tecnici, secondo le sue parole, alle divisioni più aggressive e agli incubi peggiori. Grazie.
Grazie professore Mori, CERUTI, Mauro. Thank you for having presented, clearly the philosophical and epistemological challenges, the risk and also the promises. Thank you. And now we'll proceed with the second presentation, and I'm happy to introduce Father Gregory MATHEW, Assistant Professor of the Faculty of Philosophy of Dharmaram Vidya Krishtram, Pontifical Athenaeum of Philosophy, Theology, Canon Law, and Formative Spirituality and Counseling of Bangalore, India. Oh, yeah.
Very good evening.
Father Gregory, it's yours.
Dignitaries on the stage, off the stage, and my dear friends, a very good evening to you all. As we already know, emerging technologies, namely nano, bio, information, and cognitive technologies are heading toward a convergence. NBIC, nano, bio, information, cognitive. NBIC technologies seem to influence the essence of human identity through human-machine augmentation and enhanced cognitive capacity. This is indeed a concern to thinkers from different walks of life. Converging on man. All sciences and technologies now move around certain fundamental questions about the nature of one, matter and energy, two, life, and three, mind. Humans and machines become closer, and the interface for machines to communicate with human brain or nervous system is likely to be evolved. Specific payoffs associated with NBIC may include enhancing individual sensory and cognitive capabilities, brain-to-brain interaction, nanorobots that can move to the neuron level of the human body, and ameliorating physical and cognitive decline that is common to the aging of mind. Computer information technologies interfaced with the human brain are bringing about a new evolution called cyborgs. Thus, we see that the technologies are converging on human, and human identity is becoming merged with the technological features. Objectives of the paper. An analysis of the context from a theological lens has to take into account the radical changes in the understanding of human identity. The anthropological approach would be the best to explore the context as it is concerned with the human nature, the resources, the limitations, and the destiny of human person. Theological anthropology does not have a univocal definition, but has a pluriform approach. Imago Dei, which is a significant concern in anthropological discussions, has various connotations and interpretations, such as human being as created, co-creator, the creature having a partnership with the God, the togetherness of humans with one another, etc. Therefore, the objectives of the paper could be summarized as follows. 1, to analyze theologically the features of human existence in the context of converging of technologies on humans. 2, to explain human identity with its nuances in the context of emerging convergence, and to redefine the mission of humans. Collective human endeavor and the common good. Every human endeavor has a positive leap for the well-being of human family. With the help of science and technology, humans have extended their mastery over nearly whole of nature and continues to do so. The Aristotelian concept of human nature was that of a static being. Gaudium et Spes reiterates that the human race has passed from being a static reality to a more dynamic and evolutionary one. In this process, emerging technologies provide a new perspective, appreciating the potential of human creativity to improve humanity in all spheres of life. Emerging technologies and religion. The big fear about emerging technologies, especially artificial intelligence, robotics, and cyborgs, which are in the backdrop of NBIC, is that they put a question mark against the authenticity of religion and that the various beliefs about the soul, which is a sacred dimension. However, I would prefer to state that the technologies would enhance genuine faith. Our free will seems to be infinitely tied down with some non-computable factor in the laws that govern the universe. This factor is beyond the simulations of artificial intelligence and corresponds to a world of sedimented religious experiences that humans live on daily. Artificial intelligence can address the challenges involved in modeling the dynamics of information comprehension, integration, and communication processes, which are central to understanding the creation, modifications, and diffusion of religious knowledge. Rather than the religion's cultic and ritualistic layers, the inner core that remains still unearthed would be clearer with such explorations. The NBIC technologies and their converging signify the interconnectedness of cosmos. Theology cannot afford to ignore NBIC technologies as AI, artificial intelligence, simulates certain faculties of humans who are created in the image and likeness of God. And NBIC can augment electronic circuitry or incorporate nanobits with the human body. Imago Dei. Imago Dei is considered the highest form of humans, the residence of reason, knowledge, understanding, cognition, freedom, love, and virtue. Defining Imago Dei with the human abilities and features from bodily descriptions to the concepts of the soul is a very traditional approach and is still found in many contemporary theories. These special abilities were seen as a consequence of humans' participation in the divine. Imago Dei can be linked with the experience of the existence of God and our response to it. Karl Barth observes that it is the human function itself that is created in the image of God. The functional typology of Imago Dei emphasizes that Imago Dei is endowed in the whole body and personhood of the human being. The substantive interpretation of Imago Dei, on the other hand, emphasizes God-like essence of humans as its primacy and therefore least useful in research. Relational typology helps in removing the stumbling blocks and makes the field dialogical as it focuses on relationships. The concept of co-creator is best fit for functional typology. As emerging technologies converge on humans, the interface of the human body and the electronic circuitry persuades us to rethink Imago Dei. An understanding of the features of hybridity is necessary here. Hybridity is understood as the mixing of multiple parts that were typically once separate. It provides us a lens to re-envision our worldview that is highly dependent on binaries like native, foreigner, nature, culture, real, artificial, etc. The bridging between theology and technology is a kind of hybridity. Hybridity is a methodology too, as it brings together otherwise discrete parts. It gives us a tool to transgress substantive and essential categories which act as stumbling blocks in theology-technology dialogue. In general, in all the discussions on anthropology, there seems to be a yearning for an innocent or an unadulterated state of humanity which assumes humans as something pristine and technology as something endangering. One of the major binaries that the hybrid way of thinking problematizes is the remote past and the concrete present. When one talks of technology or cyberspace, philosophy and religion have harked back to one origin of purity which is seen as glorious. What is needed is a dynamic view of nature that is not entirely indebted to the remote past or the point of creation. Hybridity helps in understanding technology and cyberspace as integral to the evolutionary process. created, co-creator, and hybridity. Created co-creator itself is a hybrid concept incorporating created and co-creator. An analysis of the theological, anthropological nuances of created co-creator in the context of the convergence of NBIC technologies provides deeper insights into the hybridity of humans and technologies. The term created can be understood as our own createness, which affirms that ultimately we are also creatures and as such dependent. To be created is to be derived and to be dependent upon antecedent factors, environmental, biological, cultural, as well as contemporary sources, environmental and cultural. The term co in co-creator represents relations, mutuality, and partnership with God. It is the ability to make relationships and interactions within the community. The term co-creator would connote the freedom of the human being, which is the fundamental condition of existence. God gives the created creatures the capacity to choose their future, to form and act for reasons, ends, and goals of their own. The creatures with whom God can talk are created with the capability of grasping what creation is. We are participating in the creative action of God, not on our own, not in subordination, but in partnership. It also confirms that the future is open and undetermined. Technology and cyberspace have to be placed in the context of creation, and the theological and cyberspace evolution as creative expression, where our role as created, co-creator become more pronounced. Hybridity and traditional boundaries. Technology, which may be an extension of human senses, supports humans to overcome their limitations. It is the human mind that leaks out into technological tools and prostheses. The cyborg or hybrid raise questions about human nature, human identity, and the relationship between humans and non-humans in the world. Whether one would be able to live wisely and wholesomely in a world constantly being reshaped by technology is another concern. Though not combining flesh and wires, everyone has a cyborg-like dimension with the mind and self spreading across the biological brain and non-biological circuitry of everyday appliances and devices. In the face of NBIC technologies, the boundaries of what is or is not human and non-human begin to blur. Next, we discuss certain intriguing aspects of converging technologies. Techno-optimism and idolatry. Technological optimists think that technology can solve all the issues related to human life. Converging technologies may promote such thoughts with the revolutionary features of NBIC. If the optimists are right, then the interests of next generation will not be harmed by the present. The over-domination of technology threatens the human ability to think and act ethically. Techno-optimism, in turn, leads to idolatry of technology. Technological determinism. It is a theory that assumes that technology determines the development of social structure and values, and thus human life is technocentric. Technology develops autonomously, and society is seen as a passive receiver and not an agent of any change. This view implies that humans are mere slaves of technology. Optimism or determinism. What we need are investigations to develop radically different technologies. Society is technology driven to a certain extent, but our free will transcends it. What matters is not the technology itself, but the attitude we keep towards technology. Dehumanization and mechanization. Dehumanization is a consequence of the idolatry of technology. Machine-augmented humans may accelerate mechanization. Technological parameters may get undue importance and the genuinity of free will may be watered down. The root cause is the false meaning given to the material goods by humans. No technology replaces humans. The predictions of Stephen Hawking that artificial intelligence will supersede humans have been accepted widely. Hawking's opinion is based on Moore's law, which speaks about the capacity of computers. I would like to argue that enhancement in the performance of computers cannot be extended to the evolution of artificial intelligence or any technology superseding humans. Here, a crucial theological question in the fast developing milieu of technologies crops up. Can the finite substitute the infinite? Can space and time be self-transcendent? AI or NBIC, any related NBIC technology cannot replicate human intelligence and its social and interrelational dimensions. From a theological perspective, technology cannot substitute humans, as humans are imago Dei, created in the image and likeness of God. Though technology can simulate certain general features of human beings, it cannot replicate or clone any particular individual. Hence, it could be stated that artificial intelligence or related technologies of NBIC are unable to replace human beings. A new perspective on humans. Humans are created beings God can talk to and beings who can listen and respond. They are in partnership with God, and the converging technologies attest to this fact. Converging technologies, when integrated into human life, provide new perspectives on human reality, human dignity, and the meaning of life. The technologies facilitate our self-understanding with new insights about human creation and the features of biological systems. The questions raised on human dignity and personhood are helpful to relieve ourselves from the clutches of the past and to develop a more genuine understanding of evolution. God's creative powers are mirrored in NBIC. Converging technologies can be seen as a result of our God-given imagination and courage to be co-creators by creating something new. Human dignity. The basis of human dignity lies in our call for being in communion with God. The image of God signifies human dignity. From the very circumstance of their origin, humans are already invited to converse with God. Technology promotes communication and interpersonal contact, but does not enhance dialogue, as communication would be mostly to gadgets. The person on the other side may not be duly acknowledged. A few challenges. 1. The traditional institutional forms of religion may not be able to engage confidently and constructively to the hybrid technological evolution like that of a cyborg. Sacred texts would find it difficult to interpret in hybrid contexts. 2. The technologized human may challenge traditional assumptions like embodied human existence. 3. Ambiguities would arise about the quantity and quality of humanity of the technologized human in the light of the symbiotic relationship to technology, loss of self that follows fusion with the technology, and the confusion over techno-blurred boundaries of life, death, etc. Our mission. The theological reflections entrust us with certain specific missions. 1. To promote human interactions and relations. NBIC technologies would make humans more technology-oriented and less other-oriented. The other would be viewed as just a terminal in the traffic of data, and human dimensions would be ignored. Instead of the present cultural and religious identities, technology may evolve like religion and culture. Deliberate means to ensure personal relationships are necessary. 2. To set and practice relevant ethical norms. ethical and moral standards have not been discussed in this paper. In the context of the human-machine interface, the misuse of technology to control the other is a possibility, and it should be a concern for moral theologians. Conclusion. Human dignity will not be affected by automation, advances in AI, brain-computer interfaces, cyborgs, or any such development. The relevant inferences may be summarized as follows. 1. Certain special functions of human body and mind could be enhanced with the help of technology. Human brain processes cannot be replicated by any technology. The insights about humans as imago Dei will be enhanced with the potential features of the NBIC technologies. The converging of technologies cause tensions and anxieties during its transition periods. The people of the transition period will have preoccupations and would think that the human-machine interface, that too on the nanoscale, would be detrimental to the unique and genuine existence of the human. Such anxieties would disappear in course of time. With the man-machine interface and hybridity, the essence of humans, which exists beyond any AI-based or bio-nanobot type programming, will be more specifically understood. The essence may be small in terms of arithmetic evaluation, but the uniqueness of the essence thus revealed would be remarkable, as it offers some fascinating insights into imago Dei. Thank you all.
Thank you, Professor Matthew. Now, I want to introduce Professor Judit SANDOR. Judit SANDOR is full professor at the Central European University, Department of Political Science in Vienna, and director of the Center for Ethics and Law in Biomedicine, Budapest, Hungary. Professor SANDOR, it's your time.
Thank you very much. I would like to start with to say many thanks for the invitation for this conference. I think we are touching very important subjects. And I wanted to start with a statement that whenever new technologies emerge, I think there are two different legal reactions usually take form. One is these contrasting forms. One view holds that it is better to wait and to see how the stakeholders and the market work out of a proper, safe, and ethical ways to apply to new technologies. The other one is try to call immediate reaction. Sometimes there is a panic, a moral panic, or of a kind of hurry to arrange a regulation. Normally, it takes a very technical form in the forms of accreditation, immediate reactions, licensing, and focusing on the technical elements of new technologies. I would like to suggest a third form, which is more based on ethics and also try to refer to human rights. It's a disclaimer, perhaps, but for me, the common good is very close to the basic principles of human rights. But I also would like to say, I don't think that human rights are untouchable, and we cannot create human rights for the 21st century, or we cannot interpret human rights to concretize them, because many people think they no longer understand, for instance, what is the context of human dignity vis-a-vis of robotics. And we need to reinterpret and help in the interpretation. Just an introduction of some of the terms. I think it's important that technology, how we understand it is since the 17th century, is not just tools, but it's understood much broader. It includes processes, materials, and systems. And emerging technologies are perceived as capable of changing the status quo. And of course, we are speaking also emerging technologies, and I also would like to refer to combination of different technologies. Today, we have heard many examples for merging technologies. Transformative technologies, that's another expression, is often used, and I think we can cite numerous examples how, for instance, it will change the infrastructure and moving, and how territories were regarded differently, how computer and internet or biotechnology, and suddenly the development has accelerated, and now we're speaking about robotics, artificial intelligence, genome editing, and many other technologies. Ethicists, and even to some extent lawyers, has to also reflect on how people react on these new technologies. And fiction and science fiction is often much ahead of technologies, and gave also of an opportunity to discuss things. And of course, fears are sometimes realistic, sometimes unrealistic, but this is already fueling ethical debates much ahead. But going back to my proposal that try to, instead of the immediate reactions or wait until the market will arrange a new technology, I would like to say what kind of basic questions we could ask. And of course, some of the questions are related to these public fears, or the fears which have crystallized in different ethical debates. One is, I think it's common on the technologies. I basically refer to genome editing and artificial intelligence, but it's also in many other technologies. Maybe I selected these two, and we were discussing in a FP7 project under the framework of potential of enhancement. So will technology make us human irrelevant? This is Harari's question. Would artificial intelligence or genome editing further enhance commodification? Can humans control the application of technology? Would it contribute to the fragmentation of personhood or the commodification of the human body and beings? These are concerns, fears coming from the public, but often also the governance is reacting to these questions. Legal questions, to some extent more technical and also related to these concerns, are very typical in the context, especially artificial intelligence, digital technology, is the privacy concerns, but to a certain extent even human genome has crystallized questions related to the privacy, even genetic privacy, new terms have been introduced, and whether these privacy concerns and the challenges to privacy via several technologies may result in a surveillance capitalism. This is Shoshana Zuboff's term. How could human rights principles be implemented in a technical design? Making up people, this is Jan Hacking's terms. Would uneven access to technology increase vulnerability and discrimination? In other words, maybe some new forms of discrimination occurs as the well-off could buy also better technologies and also could have access to better treatment and also some new priorities. I also would like to cite a Hungarian philosopher who unfortunately died 2 years ago, and her concern was also the scientific method in itself. Mauro FERRARI stated that 300 years scientific knowledge has been striving for a description of the world from which just the observer was missing. So we are, and this is of course, as a scientific methods, we try to inalienate ourselves from the object of research, but it may also contribute to make us person as object. And the big question is that scientists who are very knowledgeable about a certain issue, how can they also contribute into creating of or reflecting on certain values and not just a mere distant observer. Of course, it's interact with the scientific methods. And for instance, just one example of how perception, observation matters, that this is, maybe it's not fair because it has been done 2005, but they tried to decode the famous smile of Mona Lisa. And what is the artificial intelligence found that she is 83% happy, 9% disgusted, 6% fearful, and 2% angry, and was less than 1% neutral. Of course, this is now how we see our paintings. We have all emotions, we have all resonance, empathy, etc. But of course, if we take a technological approach, this is what you get, and sometimes it can be useful, as we see of medical interpretations. Big old questions, but I would like to make here a distinction. This is a question when to regulate and how to regulate. And there are two models. One is there's a cautionary tale from the internet. This is often the regulatory theories mention that we waited too long and internet itself regulated itself because we didn't touch this issue in time because of waiting too much. To a certain extent, they use this metaphor for biobanks as well. But if you look at the human cloning, for instance, then we weren't very much ahead. In my country, we are forbidding human cloning in 4 different laws. So just very much wanted to be on the issue. And of course, cloning was defined in a very confusing way, if you think about stem cell research, because it was a very early reaction. But technology and human rights, as this is Sheila Jasonov's approach, is that try to understand also the power structures. So that's another dimension. I try to introduce ethical dimension, the public dimensions, the public fear dimensions, also how science is reflecting on new technologies. And she said that we must understand how power is delegated to the technological system in order to find a good answer how to regulate this issue. Of course, and that's what I think it's very important that what I noticed, and I would like to use these 2 examples, the human genome editing on one side and artificial intelligence. I know that it's a complex set of technology on the other side, but I see that although in the beginning it seems that techno was learning from bio, but now we have lots of examples that the techno-ethics or regulation of technology goes much ahead. And in the same time, we are speaking about convergent technologies. I think it's important that not all the technological regulation is start from the bottom. So we can learn from each other. And I think we should combine certain solutions. And instead of what I see often, a different group of experts try to regulate an issue, let's say stem cells, then on biobanks, and the learning processes, discovering the issues of human dignity, non-discrimination, they should have learned from the previous assessment. So the 2 emerging technologies, which is often were discussed previously, now we understand better the theoretical and applications, but it was regarded both as a kind of potential technology for enhancement, one for technical enhancement, other for biological enhancement, and providing new opportunities for treating diseases which had genetic backgrounds and also of different tools. They also consider He-Ching-Kui experimentations of creating of HIV-resistant babies that is hard to control retrospectively. And artificial intelligence has also capacity to deal with big data. It may further accelerate existing discrimination, that's a negative impact, but it can enhance our capacity to deal with data. They also mention of biases. The 10 major sources of the artificial intelligence which they listed, many of them are US-based sources, and even the 10th is the Facebook. So you could imagine the biases which is creating and accelerate also discrimination. So just very briefly about the 2 technologies, what kind of human rights were raised vis-a-vis of the governance documents and recommendation and some laws. Of course, right to life, privacy, non-discrimination, even specific discrimination based on genetic characteristics. I will not go into the technical details because we heard presentations from scientists. And just I wanted to say that while in the beginning genome editing was regarded as a kind of human genome editing, especially after the Hong Kong summit, as a kind of extreme example. Now we can see that actually when parents, this is a very recent from February 2023, Americans were asked about which methods they would use in order to increase their chances that the child could go to a top 100 universities. And interestingly, even they asked for most willing or most unwilling. And not only of the special preparatory tests were preferred by some of the parents, but also 28% also highlighted some form of genome editing, which is, I think it's a big change. But the genome editing, human genome editing, was also of a field of studies when scientists took a lead to organize ethics summit. And I think the term is also responsible research, and to tell scientists about their hesitation also appeared in this field of studies. And for instance, Jennifer Doudna, who openly stated her fears and even nightmares when they started to deal with the technology. I think it's also very important to understand the new role and the new character of a scientist who is hesitant, who dare to tell doubts and not just clear-cut success stories. And we have to get used to that the scientists will openly reveal their hesitations. As a human rights assessment, I'm just telling an example that of course, we have to look from patients' or users' perspectives, or the researcher perspectives. Freedom of science is also of a human rights. Of course, dignity of the consumer and or the patient, prohibition of discrimination, for instance, privacy, safety, and the society. That's the third dimension. So we all have to analyze it from, for instance, fairness, non-discrimination, whether therapy aims on enhancement of therapy. These are societal aspects. I mentioned that both of these emerging technologies were mentioned under the umbrella of enhancement, and nevertheless, different questions have been raised in the two technologies. For instance, whether they can use human genome editing in a certain group of patients, should they use for germline interventions, what kind of preliminary information is needed for that, how this reacts to the privacy of a child once it will become available, should it focus on hereditary effect, or what are the basic framework. And here I have to say that although in the beginning there were a lot of norms and recommendations, but then at certain point the reference, especially in Europe, centered around the Oviedo Convention, Article 13, which, if you look at the date in 1997, of course, couldn't even think about genome editing. And it is about genetic modification in general. And it doesn't say too much, but basically the normative anchor which we still apply is based on this article, which allows the modification of human genome only for preventive, diagnostic, or therapeutic purposes, and only if its aim is not to introduce any modification in the genome of any descendant. In other words, somatic genome modification is allowed to a certain extent when it's preventive, diagnostic, and therapeutic purposes serves, while germline intervention is not allowed. There were a lot of doubts and questions, and everyone expected that they will make a more precise reference to genome editing. It didn't happen, but the Council of Europe, the Ethics Committee, made it clear that they also mean, basically they just repeated that Article 13 also relevant in case of genome editing. And a lot of innovation has been also done by international organizations. I think it's very important that WHO created a registry for human genome editing. This is also of another important approach. And of course, they made sure that clinical trials included in the registry had to go through to prior ethics approval. So they had a procedural approach, but nevertheless, it's very important in case of genome editing protocols. So we have some normative anchors when we look at genome editing, the distinction between somatic germline intervention, therapy enhancement, whether it's in vitro or in vivo intervention, and normally this changes, of course, whether it appears in nature, when it's a foreign gene is involved, and when it's just a repairing of genome. Artificial intelligence, the other technology, and actually now there are a lot of communication between gene technology and artificial intelligence, had enormous legal sources now, and even a lot of legal sources in the pipeline. So it seems like in the beginning, it was a little bit of back of development. Now they are risk-based, sectoral approach, multiple instruments, international organizations. It is WHO definitions from 2021, and also try to mention rights in vis-a-vis of artificial intelligence. What I noticed that, of course, data protection, especially in Europe, is very developed. Some people even say overdeveloped. But there are many other issues. I think it's not just dealing with the mass sets of data. For instance, it's classifying different individuals, and classification could lead to discrimination. What constitutes discrimination in the context of the technology? How the data, what are the data sources? The danger is that if there is a discrimination which we haven't recognized, or we couldn't fight against it, then it accelerates because it's involved in the data. So therefore, it's very important to analyze the gender, race-based, other-based discriminations, and it's also of they looking at, for instance, what are the therapeutic use of the technology. Biases, I think it was already mentioned in previous presentations. If we don't understand how the technology works, which is very important that we have a control, then we shall not able to tackle biases which are as a source, could be the data source, or is the way how we interpret and reflect on this data. Of course, privacy rules are often stated, but I think we should concretize in this. One of the first governance instruments was the Toronto Declaration, and it emphasized the equality and non-discrimination in machine learning system, and it has been followed by numerous instruments. Since we are behind the schedule, I'm just going very quickly through them. The Council of Europe released guidelines in 2019. The European Ethical Charter on the Use of Artificial Intelligence in Judicial System in 2018, and recommendations of the Committee of Ministers of Member States Human Rights in 2020. It's related to the human rights impacts of algorithmic systems. WHO also had ethics and governance of artificial intelligence for health purposes. So it started to have, since 2021, a lot of sectoral recommendations and guidelines. They mentioned the no harm principle, safety, accuracy, and efficiency. Governments should strive to ensure that the digital divide between countries is not widened. It's very difficult to ensure, but we spoke about including the peripheries in the first presentation, and I think it's very important to mention that the artificial intelligence will have sources from multiple sources, and also making possible to access. The UNESCO also had a recommendation, and at that time 193 countries, and they emphasized the vulnerability. That's also text vulnerability is an important aspect. I just mentioned one element, of course, both of them are much longer. And they mentioned also that a person should never be objectified, nor should their dignity be otherwise undermined, or human rights and fundamental freedoms violated or abused. Of course, it's a very general statement, and this is what I wanted to say. That should be also further interpreted and concretized. But they already used some data from which is, for instance, seen significantly less women are participating in the AI industry, which is also creating of biases, and also we should look at the statistics of access, and then we could see how these inequalities between communities. There are specificities of fears to which maybe new types of human rights instruments should react. One is the fear of substitution. So the fear of, we spoke about the labor market, but also in other fields, the amplifying biases and how AI can be used for a better world. This is the common good which we are seeking an answer for this conference. And so we should look at the societal impacts of the technology. I would like then, looking at different, as a conclusion of how AI has been implemented in ethics. There are different technologies of that in each phases of design and implementation has to be interpreted. And also of, this is Nicole Vincent's observations that maybe we should also increase of heightened responsibility by the technologies which are capable of enhancing of our capacities. Fairness and non-discriminations are also of element, and tech vulnerability. Technology creates dependence, and you could see how people who use all the technologies might be even more vulnerable than people who access latest technologies, creating also objectifications between people. I said that we should also be open to new types of human rights. We had a project on human rights in the 21st century, and I think that there are numerous new rights, even in the field of genetics, which we could take into consideration when we use of concretized human rights instruments. Also benefit sharing could be of important aspects and rights of the future generations. The conclusions of the two technologies that I think that human responsibility should preserve vis-à-vis these technologies. Human dignity is a general reference point, but I think that we should, when we're speaking about the roles of new technologies, even therapeutic benefits, we should also think about to give an alternative. So they should never fully replace a personal care, even in the field of healthcare. I also think when a new technology emerges, biological and technological aspects need to be assessed, both of them. So it could see that, for instance, ethics bodies will looking at how genetic tests are used, but they also have to assess whether artificial intelligence were used in the program which are assessing gene technologies, and these are two expertise. So I would like to see this presentation as a reference to importance of human rights, but human rights interpreted in the concrete context. And emerging technologies should also use knowledge from the bio and tech and vice versa, and to develop common instruments, because I think in the future both ethics review and ethics assessment need a multidisciplinary background. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Sandor. Ahora vamos a tener solo 10 minutos para responder algunas cuestiones y mañana tendremos tiempo para seguir con las que no se pueden responder ahora. Voy a comenzar con una cuestión que han puesto en castellano para el profesor CERUTI, que dice: usted afirmaba que estas tecnologías emergentes se autogestionan y que solo responden al paradigma tecnocientífico. Entonces, ¿cómo recuperar al individuo? ¿Cómo hacerlos converger en el bien de la persona? ¿O solo nos queda producirlos?
Sì, domanda alla quale è difficile rispondere in 2 minuti. Ho ricevuto anche molte altre domande, eventualmente domani pomeriggio le possiamo articolare. Voglio semplicemente sottolineare in 1 minuto forse la questione che le raggruppa tutte queste questioni a partire da quella che lei ha letto. Siamo di fronte ad una transizione, dobbiamo contestualizzare il problema che oggi ci interroga delle tecnologie emergenti e convergenti nella consapevolezza che stiamo attraversando una crisi antropologica e un'evoluzione antropologica straordinarie. E allora attraverso tutte queste discussioni mi venivano alla mente alcune espressioni che tante volte ci diciamo di grandi menti. Per esempio Albert Einstein, per riassumere la questione educativa che si poneva dal suo punto di vista grosso modo 1 secolo fa, nel momento in cui non le tecnologie della cognizione, ma allora era la fisica quantistica, rivoluzionava non soltanto alcune teorizzazioni che riguardavano la struttura dell'atomo, ma la nostra concezione della scienza, la nostra concezione del mondo, rivoluzionavano l'economia. E allora ebbe modo di dire: un modo di pensare ci porta alla costruzione di un mondo. Una volta emerso questo mondo, il modo di pensare che l'ha fatto emergere non sarà adatto a governare questo mondo e ci si porrà il problema di un cambiamento epistemologico, antropologico, di una sfida educativa. E risuonavano con queste parole le parole di un grande filosofo del Novecento che dialogava con Einstein e diceva: ma mai come oggi, e figuriamo oggi se le riportiamo qualche decennio dopo, mai come oggi abbiamo saputo tante cose sull'umano e mai come oggi abbiamo potuto dire così poco su che cos'è essere umano, proprio perché i saperi sull'umano così straordinariamente aumentati oggi sono frammentati in tanti dipartimenti universitari, in tante discipline, e non riescono a integrarsi fra di loro in una visione complessa dell'umano. E infine, un'ultima battuta: dobbiamo contestualizzare questa nostra riflessione a cui Monsignor Paglia ci ha chiamato nel contesto planetario in cui oggi stiamo vivendo. Non dobbiamo dimenticare, anche perché abbiamo tutti, quando ci riflettiamo, la sensazione che siamo quasi dei sonnambuli, un po' come i nostri nonni lo sono stati di fronte alla guerra mondiale precedente. Stiamo vivendo un tempo di guerra che rischia di deragliare, di sfuggire a causa dell'inedito aumento di potenza tecnologica di cui disponiamo e dell'inedita interconnessione planetaria in cui si agiscono le nostre vite. E l'inedito della nostra condizione antropologica oggi, lo dico soltanto, è la nostra capacità di autosoppressione a tutti i livelli. In questo momento persino un caso potrebbe fare deragliare l'umanità dal suo percorso, e le nostre riflessioni sulla natura della tecnologia, soprattutto delle tecnologie della cognizione, possono essere un percorso privilegiato per aumentare la nostra coscienza di questo inedito carattere della condizione umana planetaria in cui tutto è connesso, in cui viviamo oggi.
Grazie, Professor Mauro. I just remind you that tomorrow there will be time for your question to be answered. We hope to, and because now they had many questions, and so we have to give time only for one question. And so before Judit, Professor Judit, I have a question for Professor Gregory. It is about, co-creation. And see, the concept of the co-creation is dangerous. Man is a collaboration to God's creation plan. Co-creator implying creating freedom of man can easily mean that man is an arbiter of God, of God's creation plan. What do you think? What do you answer? Il suo microfono non funziona bene, allora è per questo che...
You mean the question is about co-creator, right? Father, would you please repeat the question? It's about co-creation, co-creator, right?
Co-creator, yes.
Okay.
The concept of co-creator.
Yeah, right. Human beings are co-creators in the sense that, see, we have a faculty of reason. We can make ourselves as our objects for reflection and analysis. We can evaluate our own actions critically. That means we have a faculty of unleashing or releasing our own mind for creative work. Other creatures do not have this faculty. So in that sense, we are co-creators. We are creatures, no doubt. We are created, we are creatures. At the same time, we are endowed with this special faculty. That means faculty for self-reflection and evaluation. And with our energy and mind, we can contribute to creative developments. I hope that is sufficient to explain the concept of co-creator. A few more questions are there. One, I shall read the short question. You said that advances of technology will not diminish human dignity. While this is true ontologically, can they diminish the perception and protection of such dignity? Can you elaborate? Another question also, more or less, around human dignity. As humans are imago Dei, endowed with the soul and body, will the converging technology be affecting the dignity of humans? My response is this one. First of all, we should understand theology should not be divorced from other branches of knowledge. A question which may part of theology will find it answer or explanation many a time in some other disciplines. Human faculty, the point which I told earlier, one is human faculty for self-evaluation and critical reflection. That will remain with any technology. That will not be taken away from us. And another thing is, see, technology is in a computational realm. Whatever done with the technology is mostly based on programming and their only computation. That means input-output system. Whereas we are endowed with so many non-computational dimensions. There are so many tacit elements, tacit dimensions as part of our personality, which no technology can simulate or clone. So in that way, whatever be the development in the technology, the essence of that humanness or dignity of human will not be affected. But the apparent perception, that may be affected, because when technology is advanced, there will be divisions in the society. People who are much comfortable with the technology, people who are experts in technology, and people who don't have that much access in technology. So there will be some technology-centered classifications in the society, and that may affect human dignity in one way. Another thing is, in the case of developments like cyborg, people may think that it's not correct, but people may think that the human functions are actually a part of technology or that is controlled by technological gadgets, but it's not true. Certain faculties are supported or enhanced with the help of gadgets. Humanness cannot be changed or altered with any technology. That is my response to that question. Then
that's Father, just one, because tomorrow we'll have time to answer. Thank you. Thank you very much. And now, Professoressa Judit.
Grazie. I have a question related to genome editing and also of what are the ethical issues in a case of somatic genome editing. And true that I consider the Oviedo Convention is extremely laconic, and I think that in the future needs further interpretation. What does it mean of preventing diagnostic? I think it's difficult to blur the line between actually even the two forms of genome editing. And there are some voices which are saying that if we can cure of a treatment, then why should we stop at somatic genome editing? But I think that this normative distinction still applies. One thing is that it's changing the original schools and camps of ethics reasoning. Normally the right to life approach or the life protection is together with non-interventionist approach, while the autonomy approach is more for the interventionist approach. And genome editing is giving a hope for children, fetuses, humans to live, those who didn't even have a chance to live. And that's rearranging the ethical camps. It's a big challenge. I think it's the original two camps might have to reconsider some of its position. I don't want to go into details because of the time, but I think it's a very interesting phenomenon, and I didn't want it to say that with Article 13 everything has been arranged in the field of genome editing, because of course not.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your patience and participation. And I think we have to remind us that, you know, the new and the converging technologies are there to help the human person to be a good person, a better person, and to also to help us to live together, to take care of each other, and to love each other. Thank you, and thanks to all our presenters. And tomorrow, it begins at 9 o'clock, and don't forget that if you have time, you know, the concert tonight at 9 o'clock, also 9 o'clock p.m. Have a good evening. Buonasera. Grazie.